We taught the Elmina Castle in the central region of Ghana, and I would say that it was a very educative one. And this woman was our tour guide. She was giving us much information about the castle before the official touring.
Gunpowders, iron bars, used clothes, alcohols, and other goods to trade with the golds, ivory, spices, and artifacts from the local people. Now, during that period, the system of trading was barter trading system. Thus, they exchanged what they brought with the local people. So the purpose of this castle here was to serve as a trade post to protect their trading goods and the traders from possible attacks. So in here, all the rooms we have on the ground floor, they were storerooms or warehouses where they kept the goods that they had and the ones that they put in them. Now, during that period too, the rate at which the locals were giving the Portuguese the goods, it gave them the impression that the land was rich in gold. So they named the place Elmina, which means the mines. But the locals could not pronounce the name well. So the name was corrupted to Elmina. And also Aldea, which means the village. It was also corrupted to Edina. So these are the names that are used by the people now. But these names doesn't mean that the locals never had a name. The original name of this town here was Anomansa, inexhaustible supply of water. That's water that when you drink, it doesn't get finished. But due to the two names, we hardly hear the original name at this moment. Now in the 1500s, things changed in the history of Africans. When the Europeans claimed they had discovered a new world by Christopher Columbus. When we talk about the Caribbeans and the Americans, you know, the places were rich in minerals and also fertile for plantations. So the Spaniards went in there and they started using the Native Americans there to work on the land. But due to the harsh treatment that they were giving to them, the people there ended up dying out. They were also affected by some European diseases.
So this is the general compound of the castle, and when you are there, the atmosphere changes. You feel the pain, the torture, and the cry of souls.
If there's none, let's begin the tour at the famous.
Mothers prayed, but no reply. Only the door, no return key. They said, walk forward, don't look back, but the walls still call our name. Every step was a piece of the past. Every breath carried shame. Elmina, hear me. We remember who was taken.
There's another one down there. They are called mattresses, fixed by the Dutch to strengthen the walls of the castle from collapsing. And the metals on them, they were fixed by the British to help the policemen train by climbing it up and down. The building at the center here was the Portuguese church. That was the first Catholic church we built in Ghana here. When the Dutch came in, they never used the place to worship, but rather used the building for a different purpose. So they divided the structure into two. The upper part was an office mess. That was a dining hall for the junior soldiers. The down part, an auctioning hall, where they were buying and selling the slaves. And when the British came in, they used the building as school for the policemen, and when Ghana took over, the place is a museum. At this moment, we are going upstairs to have a look at the governor's apartment, the kitchen, the church, and where the candles are. For the sake of the females. No, let's use this side. This side is far better than here.
Of how it looked like, how many people were literally camped there awaiting shipment. So let's go and have a view of that, and then we shall see how painful the people went through awaiting shipment to Europe and America.
We stand where they lost their lives and carry them everywhere.
So this stairs leads to the governor's bedroom or the apartment. And as you can see, we're now touring the inside of the governor's bedroom. From here, we will be descending to the kitchen that was built by both the Portuguese and the Danish, or the Danes as others call it. So this is the room. This is the governor's apartment, and we've left that place, and we'll be descending to the kitchen.
We carry what we learn. Their bodies left through the door, but their spirit never gone. We walk free because they couldn't, and we sing their song. Stone remembers, and now so do we. In the dark, chains still echo at midnight. History carved in the heart. Feet on the floor where they cried. Salt in the air, tears in the sea. Mothers pray but no replies. Only the door, no return key.
They say walk forward, don't look back, but the walls still call our name. Every step was a piece of the past.
Alright, so we have the Portuguese kitchen, because the bigger one there, and the Dutch kitchen, the small one. Now, due to trust issues, the Dutch abandoned the Portuguese kitchen. The church.
Hold me, their pain still live in this place. No drums, no dancing tonight, just silence and broken prayers. We stand where they lost their lives and carry.
Alright, so we are in the Dutch Reformed Church. Beneath was one of the female slave dungeon. The memory verse after says that Zion is the one that was at this right place. So the Dutch, God was them here. It was a dining hall for the senior officers, and beneath it was the largest female slave dungeon. Running irons were kept in fire. They had initials on it. Bearing the company's or the merchant's name, they put that on their chest or back. A lot of them died from the shock. So the males were the ones receiving the branding, whilst the females and the children, they were wearing tags on their necks or hands. But bear in mind, these things are mostly done on animals. So psychologically, they saw Africans.
Remember who was taken away. Their pain still live in this place.
Now when the ships arrived, the survived females came out, used this passage here to the room of no return. So initially there was a staircase that they used to descend to the place, but now it's a drainage. And to prevent accidents, we have these metals blocked here. So we'll be using the male transit dungeon to the room of no return.
Hands that bled, hands that never touched home again. Eyes that search for the land ahead, but only found the end. Gold above, hell below, church bells ringing while souls were sold. Faith upstairs, suffering low, two stories never inside of me. We remember who was taken away. Their pain still live in this place. No drums, no dancing tonight, just silence and broken prayers.
So we're actually inside the yard, or let me say we were going to the door of no return, the room where they encamped them to leave the castles, and that is a tiny door that they passed through. And as you can see, the walls, it's really mental draining. It's really mentally draining. I really wish you could experience it personally, even though we've been reading it in history books. I wish you could experience it personally.
Because they didn't.
Alright, so intercession room here. The survived females came from this direction here, while the survived males used where. As you can see here, the gate is shut. So you go down properly, you take 4 to 5 steps before you come out to prevent accidents. Please don't forget to bend it.
But their spirit never gone. We walk free because they couldn't, and we sing their song. Stone remembers, and now so do we.
Alright, so we are in the room of no return, and the gate you see here was the gate of no return. Now during the trading of the golds and ivories, the Europeans used the same side to ship their goods to Europe. The gate was wider to this left here, but when they started the slave trading, they narrowed it to this size here for easy counting and controlling the lives of the slaves. And initially the sea was very close to the building, but due to the climate change, that is why we see it at the far end. So they used small boats with the help of a ladder. They descended them in the boats, packed them in the ships, and took them to the Caribbean countries. The Americans and some were taken to Europe to work on their plantations and mines. When we talk about the tobacco plantation, the sugarcane, cotton, coffee, dye, and other stuff. Life in the ships was very terrible compared to what they went through in here. The females were raped. Some even died in the act. They were tortured, beaten. Some refused to eat because they wanted to starve themselves to death. And those that did that, they used tools to chisel their teeth in order to create space in them. They were affected by diseases because of the way they were packed in the ships. And those that got affected, they just took them, threw them into the sea. So majority of them died in the ships. Now due to that, by the end of the whole slave trading, 2/3 died and 1/3 survived. So the rates we have in here, they are from those in the diaspora. It is their belief that those that died in here, their souls are still here, and as a way of showing respect for their souls to rest in peace. Some descendants too, they make prayers for their ancestors. That's why we have the alcohol bottles and the water bottles in here, and we can see some candles burning, which means that just a few minutes ago, some families came in here and performed.
So at this point, I was caught up in emotions. I was just trying to feel my ancestors through the war. I was just looking around, shaking my head in disbelief that this is where they kept my ancestors, and this is where they made them pass. This is what they passed through to the ship to Europe and Americas. Forgive me because that place is quite dark. That is the door of no return. You see how tiny that looks. Forgive me, my camera guy, we're not having any LED light around, and the room is quite dark. That is why I could say that is the door of no return. Now we were going to experience or find ourselves in the cells where they kept the slaves, or better to say the rebellious slaves, and then the rebellious white soldiers, and you could see the difference. You could actually see and feel how our forefathers were literally treated badly, as if they were not humans by this white. Let's delve into it and experience it as we get into the slave cells.
Okay, so these are cells. So the cell here with the metal gate was an European cell for European soldiers. The one with the wooden gate, a skull and a crossbone, it was a condemned cell for the male African slaves. And we are going to compare the two cells here. And when we get in there, I will tell you the reason behind the cells. Here first. Alright, so European cell here for European soldiers. Now some of the soldiers sneaked out without permission. They got themselves drunk, came back, and they were misbehaving. So as a form of punishment, they kept them here for some few hours. They were given food and water, 2 windows for ventilation. Now let's compare this cell with the Mandela cell. Please come here.
Yeah, two more.
Condemned cell here for the male African slaves. Some of the male soldiers fought with the soldiers. Male slaves fought with the soldiers to free themselves in the dungeons. We refer to them as the freedom fighters, but to the Europeans, they were rebelling against them. So they arrested them, kept them here. They were starved to death. So no one came in here and went out alive. It was just their bodies that they took them, threw them into the sea. The only source of ventilation in here came from this hole, which leads to the other cell. The mouth there, metal with the holes there, wasn't for ventilation, but rather a peephole to check whether they were alive or dead.
Remember, and now, so do we. Sunlight, names erased in the dark.
Now you watched the video about the two cells, one for the African condemned slaves and one for the European soldiers, and you could see the difference. One that has a ventilation, one does not. You could literally see that even with their people, they treated them right when they had gone wrong. And ours, badly.
Mother's pray, but no replies. Only the door, no return key.
They say walk forward, don't look back, but the walls still call our name. Every step was a piece of the past, every breath.
Alright, so this is a cannonball which weighs about 25 kg. So chains or shackles were attached to it to put on their legs or hands. They stood here for 24 hours with no food, no water, whether rain or shine. So as they stood here, it served as a deterrent to the rest of the females in the dungeon. Please let's have a look at this dungeon here.
We stand where they lost their life and carry them away. Hands that build, hands that
Alright, so this dungeon here contained about 130 females, and it had a church built on top of it called the Dutch Reformed Church. Now when the Dutch came in, they were Protestants. So they abandoned the Catholic Church that the Portuguese built and rather had theirs on top of this particular dungeon. And most of the materials that were used to build the castle were imported. So the reddish bricks we have on the floor here, they were from the Portuguese. And the yellowish one we have on the wall here from the Dutch. They used the bricks to balance their ships when they came in here. But on their way back, they used the slaves to do the balancing based on the way they were planned in the ships. The clothing chains you see here, they are not original. In 2016, students came in here to act and have a feel of what happened here called the re-enlightenment. So they used the cloth to cover themselves up, the chains on their legs and hands. They slept on this bare floor here for some hours. So they used this filled with kerosene to serve as light because the place was dark during the night. And when we look at the canal here, these are the original iron bars used for the windows. But because they are rusted, we have them replaced by the wooden bars.
And I wanted to have an experience. I wanted to feel the window bars. And trust me, that metal is really heavy. It's quite heavy, very, very heavy. And I understand why they removed them and replaced it with the wooden ones. It's really, really heavy metals there. And that was used for the windows to prevent the slaves from escaping.
Alright, so this is a water reservoir. 20,000 gallons of rainwater, built by the Portuguese in 1482. So pipes were laid to the rooftop. When we look here, the black pipe behind the pole is the original pipe, channeled up there whenever it rains. The water was collected here. This one here filtered the water to the reservoir. They used the water to wash, cook, and do other domestic purpose. Now when the Dutch came in, they had trust issues. Now due to how they captured the castle from the Portuguese, they thought the water might have been poisoned by them. So they abandoned this reservoir here and built their own reservoir to use. And theirs could contain about 60,000 gallons of rainwater, which we harvest at the main courtyard. Now when the British came in, they tested it and realized that the water was never poisoned. But they also never used this water here. They built their own reservoirs to use, and we can see theirs behind the castle. Now during that period, due to the governor's position, he stood up here. That was the problem. He stood there, ordered the soldiers to bring out all the females in the dungeons for him to make his choice. Now the selected one, because she spent weeks there without taking her bath, the soldiers fetched water from the reservoir. They washed her up, gave her something to wear and food to eat to gain some strength. After they escorted her using this chariot
So this was the entry to the female slave dungeon, and we were just passing through the tunnel to the dungeon. You can see the darkness in there, the walls. When you are passing through, you can feel it. You can feel it within your spirit, the crying souls. And that is it. That is it. So that is the yard ahead. That is the yard of the female slave dungeon. That is how the yard actually looks like. And our guests, our tourists were literally in there with a tour guide. I wanted to let you have a correct view of it. So we are actually entering the largest female slave dungeon at the Elmina Castle.
We stand where they lost.
This staircase here leads to the governor's bedroom. It has a trap door, so the soldiers opened it up and took her to the governess. And after whatever she went through in there, she used the same staircase back to the dungeons. Now, before the ships would arrive for them to go to their new destinations, they were examined because a lot of them got pregnant out of what they did with them. And those that they found out, houses were built for them in town to be taken care of. Now 3 years after the delivery, they brought the children here and educated them. So education in Ghana here started in this castle with the children that were referred to as the mixed race children or the mulattoes. And they were given some European names that are very common in Ghana here. Now the women that gave birth to the children, at a point in time, they were free to go back to their various homes, but they lost their way back home. So some were used as domestic servants in here, others as mistresses for the governors and the senior officers. Now when they were in the dungeons, the females that went up there, some resisted the rape. They fought with the governors up there, and some too were very difficult in the dungeons, but they were severely punished by the soldiers. Please let's step out, let me show you what they did to them. These were captured, and the children among them were also held captives in here. Now this dungeon here contained about 120 females. Let's have a look at the largest female slave dungeon here.
Chains still echo. History feet on the floor.
So we are actually where they kept most of the female slaves. So we are actually
They slept on this bed floor here, and they did everything on the floor. When we talk about their feeding, feces, urine, blood vomits, everything was done here whilst they were sleeping in it. They spent about 2 months to 3 months in the dungeon. So buckets were kept and cans for them to use. But during the second month, they became weak to walk to the buckets, so they did everything on themselves. You know, as females do every month, they had their menstruation. They did everything on themselves without taking their bath. This particular room here was poorly ventilated. The only source of ventilation came from the 2 windows we have here, where the bars are, and the hole there. But our hole is a room that was called the magazine. In that room, the soldiers kept their ammunition and other explosives. So whenever there was leakage, the toxic fumes came straight in here, contaminated the air, and killed a lot of the females here. So with the 150, not everyone made it after the months they spent in here. Now during that period too, the Europeans referred to the coastal areas of West Africa as the white man's grave, because malaria and yellow fever were killing them a lot. They found the place to be a punishment for them. So the men raised their line. Okay, so to conclude the story here, this castle is 543 years old. 155 years was used by the Portuguese, 235 years by the Dutch, 85 years the British, and 68 years Ghana. It is the largest, the biggest, and the oldest castle in the whole of Sub-Saharan Africa, which connected with the trans-Atlantic slave trade, designated as a World Heritage Site under UNESCO in 1979. Once again, my name is Cynthia, and thank you for having me as a tour guide. This is the end of our tour.
From the drum to the chain, from the loss to the gain, from the tears of our mothers to breaking the pain. They tried to divide us by borders and names, but the blood still remembers.